She was a clumsy virgin maid who slipped into his bathroom and fell into the billionaire's arms. The soft hum of running water echoed through the marble bathroom, the kind of space that looked more like a spa than a private home. Morning light spilled through the frosted glass, turning the steam into a golden haze. On her knees, Mira scrubbed the floor with trembling hands, her ponytail damp, her uniform clinging to her back. She was new 2 days into the job and already terrified of losing it. One more mistake, the housekeeper had warned, and she would be gone. Her breath fogged the air as she stretched to reach the far corner, muttering under her breath, "Almost done. Please, just no more mess." The next moment, her foot slipped on a patch of soap she had missed. Her body lurched forward, and before she could grab the counter, the bathroom door swung open. A man stepped inside, towel wrapped loosely around his waist, water still dripping from his dark hair. Time slowed. Mira's mop clattered to the floor as she collided straight into his chest. "Oh my God!" she gasped, slipping again, her hands catching the smooth warmth of his skin. The towel shifted dangerously. He caught her before she could hit the floor, his grip firm around her waist. For a heartbeat, all she could hear was the rush of water and their uneven breathing. Then she saw his face. Early 30s, sharp jaw, storm gray eyes that held both shock and amusement. "What are you doing in here?" His voice was low, controlled. I thought this room was empty," Mira stammered, face flushing crimson. "I am so sorry, sir. I did not mean," he exhaled, steadying her on her feet. "It is fine. You should be more careful." She nodded quickly, grabbing the fallen mop like a weapon. "Yes, absolutely. I will clean and leave right away." He was already turning away when she noticed the faint scar running across his shoulder. For a second, curiosity flickered, but she forced her gaze down. She did not belong in this world of marble floors and silk robes. She was just a maid. As soon as the door closed behind him, Mira covered her face with her hands, mortified. "Brilliant, Mira," she muttered. 2 days on the job and you literally fall into your boss." Across the hallway, Adrian Holt adjusted his towel and let out a quiet laugh under his breath. It had been months since anything or anyone had surprised him. The clumsy maid with trembling hands and wide brown eyes had just done exactly that. Outside, the ocean crashed against the cliffs below the glass terrace. The sound was soothing, steady, almost enough to drown out the memories that refused to fade. Adrian Holt, the man the world called a billionaire visionary, had come to this seaside mansion to disappear. After the accident, after the press, after losing the woman who once grounded him, he wanted silence. He wanted to be unseen. But silence had just been broken by a girl who smelled faintly of soap and rain. Later that night, Mira sat in the tiny servants' quarters, drying her uniform with a hairdryer that barely worked. Her roommate, Lila, peeked over from the next bunk. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Worse," Mira said, groaning. "I saw my boss. Naked? Almost." Lila choked on her tea. "Oh no. Please tell me you are joking." "I wish I was." Mira buried her face in her hands. "He was right there, and I fell on him." Silence stretched for a beat, then Lila burst out laughing. "Girl, if that does not get you fired, it might get you famous. If you not contact." Mira shot her a glare, but a smile tugged at her lips despite herself. "I just want to keep my job, that is all." "Then stay away from the man upstairs," Lila said, lowering her voice. "Rumor is, he owns half the city. Adrian Holt, tech billionaire, reclusive, brooding. The works." Mira froze. The name felt too heavy, too far from her world. "He is? That Adrian Holt?" "Yeah. So maybe next time, keep the bathroom door closed." When the lights went out, Mira lay awake staring at the ceiling. The image of his eyes burned into her mind. For a second, when he caught her, she had seen something: loneliness, maybe, or exhaustion. Not the arrogance she expected from someone so rich. Just a man carrying weight she could not name. She shook her head, forcing the thought away. She had bills to pay, a mother waiting for medicine, and a dream she could not afford to chase. Her sketches of ocean views tucked secretly under her mattress. This job was survival, nothing else. But somewhere in the quiet hum of the night, the echo of his voice lingered. "Be more careful." And she promised herself she would be. If you have ever done something embarrassing on your first day and wish the floor would swallow you whole, hit like and follow for the next part. Now, let us go back to our main characters, the maid who fell into the billionaire's arms, and the man who was not supposed to care. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the seaside mansion, painting the marble floors in gold. Mira was already awake, quietly sweeping the hallway outside the master suite. She moved carefully, afraid to even breathe too loud. Every sound felt dangerous, now that she knew who lived behind that door. Her heart skipped when it opened. Adrian stepped out, dressed in a gray shirt and slacks, the calm authority in his presence unmistakable. For a moment, he looked right at her, and Mira froze mid-sweep. "Good morning," he said simply. "Good morning, sir," she managed, gripping the broom so tightly her knuckles whitened. He paused, studying her face as if trying to remember where he had seen her before. Then a faint smirk appeared. "No accidents today, I hope." Her cheeks turned scarlet. "No, sir. Floors are completely dry." "Good," he said, then walked down the hall, the soft click of his shoes echoing long after he disappeared. Mira exhaled slowly, muttering to herself, "I am never touching a mop again." Downstairs, the kitchen buzzed with quiet activity. The other maids moved like clockwork, preparing breakfast trays and polishing silver. When it was her turn to deliver Adrian's coffee, Mira hesitated by the counter, adjusting her cap 3 times before picking up the tray. "Do not spill it," she whispered under her breath. "Just walk, smile, leave." She pushed the door to his study open. Adrian sat behind a massive oak desk, laptop open, a stack of papers beside him. The view behind him was breathtaking, the Pacific stretching endlessly beneath a clear blue sky. Mira set the tray down carefully, keeping her eyes low. But then the corner of a sketchbook peeked out from under her arm. One of her ocean drawings had slipped between the pages. When she turned to leave, a small breeze from the balcony flipped it open. Adrian's gaze caught the faint lines of a pencil wave, drawn with a delicacy that stopped him mid-thought. "Did you draw this?" "8 ins." Mira froze. "Oh no, I mean yes, but it is nothing. Just practice." He reached for the book, his fingers brushing the page. "This is not nothing. You have a good eye." Her pulse quickened. No one had ever said that to her before. Not even her mother. "Thank you, sir. It is just a hobby." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "Do you paint often?" "When I can afford pencils," she said with a nervous laugh. Then realizing how that sounded, she quickly added, "I mean only when I have time." He smiled, a rare softness flickering across his expression. "Keep drawing. Sometimes the only way to see clearly is through something you create yourself." Mira nodded, clutching the sketchbook like a secret treasure. "I will, sir." As she left, Adrian's eyes lingered on the doorway long after she was gone. There was something about her, the honesty, the awkward grace, the way she looked at the world as if it was still worth believing in. It had been years since he had met anyone who looked at life that way. Later that day, Mira sat on the servants' balcony, her sketchbook balanced on her knees. The sea breeze tangled her hair as she began to draw the cliffs below. She tried to focus, but her thoughts kept drifting back to him. The way he had spoken not as a boss, not as a billionaire, but as someone who actually saw her. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother popped up. "Hospital bills due tomorrow." Her stomach twisted. She had no savings left. Every cent of her paycheck was already promised. For a second, her eyes burned, but she blinked the tears away. "I can handle this," she whispered. "I have to." That evening, the house was quieter than usual. Adrian had dinner brought to his room. Mira was assigned to deliver it. Her hands shook as she carried the silver tray up the stairs. When she entered, he was by the window, staring at the fading horizon. The last light of sunset turned the ocean red. "Set it there," he said without looking back. She obeyed, trying to leave quietly, but he spoke again. "Mira, right?" "Yes, sir. You mentioned your mother this morning. Is she doing well?" The question caught her off guard. No one in this house had ever asked about her life. She is sick," she admitted softly, "but she is strong." He turned, his expression unreadable. "Strong people often forget to rest." Mira nodded, unsure what to say. "Thank you, sir. Good night, Mira." "Good night, Mr. Holt." When she left the room, her heart was racing. Somewhere deep inside, she knew something had changed, not between a maid and her employer, but between two people who had both forgotten how to connect. That night, Adrian stood by the window long after she was gone. He looked down at the untouched dinner, then at the faint reflection of himself in the glass. For the first time in months, he did not feel completely alone. Outside, the waves rolled endlessly, whispering against the rocks as if the sea itself was holding its breath for what would come next. If you believe that even the smallest kindness can bridge two worlds apart, leave a comment and share this story. Now, let us return to Mira and Adrian, whose lives are quietly beginning to intertwine beneath one roof. Rain fell hard against the windows that morning, the kind of gray coastal storm that swallowed sound and time. Mira hurried through the hallways with a towel in one hand and a tray of tea in the other. Her shoes squeaked on the polished floor, her reflection flickering in the marble like a ghost of herself. Inside the study, Adrian sat near the fire, one leg propped on a low stool. A bandage peeked beneath his pant leg, an old injury from the accident that had nearly taken his life. He was reading, but when Mira entered, he looked up. "You are still here," he said, his tone half surprise, half amusement. "Yes, sir," Mira answered, setting the tray down carefully. "The housekeeper said you should drink something warm." He nodded, watching her pour the tea. "Do you always take your job this seriously?" "I try," she said softly. "It keeps me from thinking too much." "About what?" She hesitated, then met his eyes. "About everything I cannot control." Something in that answer made him quiet. The fire crackled between them. "That makes two of us," he said finally. For a moment, they both just listened to the rain. It filled the silence like music neither of them wanted to stop. Mira noticed the open book on his lap, its pages full of sketches, not words, detailed architectural drawings of bridges and towers. "You draw too," she said. Adrian smiled faintly. "Once, before everything became about numbers and deadlines." "They are beautiful," she said, and she meant it. "Maybe you should start again." He studied her face, the sincerity in her voice. "Maybe I will, if you promise to keep drawing too." Her lips curved into a small smile. "Deal." Later that afternoon, the storm knocked out part of the power. The kitchen lights flickered, and the staff scrambled to protect the pantry from flooding. Mira ran for extra towels, her steps echoing down the hall. She turned a corner too fast, slipped again, and found herself crashing right into Adrian, who had come down to check the generator. "Oh no, not again," she gasped, mortified. He steadied her, his hands on her shoulders. "I am starting to think you do this on purpose." She laughed nervously, brushing her wet hair from her face. "I swear I do not. I am just cursed with gravity." For the first time, Adrian laughed, a deep, genuine sound that seemed to lift the weight off the whole house. "You really are something, Mira." The power returned a few minutes later, lights flickering back to life. But something else had shifted too. The distance between them did not feel so wide anymore. That evening, Adrian called her to the library. On the table lay a small box wrapped in linen. "For you," he said. Mira blinked. "What is this?" "New pencils," he replied. "You mentioned you were running out." "It's fall good action." Her breath caught. "Sir, I cannot accept this." "It is not charity," he said gently. "It is a thank you for reminding me that life is still worth looking at." She looked down at the box, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Mr. Holt." When she left, the air between them carried something unspoken. Gratitude, curiosity, maybe even the smallest spark of hope. That night she opened her sketchbook by candlelight. On the first page, she drew the sea again, but this time, a figure stood by the window watching the storm. It was him. And beneath it, she wrote in small, careful letters, "The man who helped me see the sky again." If you have ever met someone who reminded you what it means to feel alive, drop a heart in the comments. Now, let us return to Mira and Adrian, as the rain fades and something new begins to take shape between them. The next morning arrived quiet and clear, as if the storm had washed the world clean. The mansion glowed under a pale sun, and the air smelled faintly of salt and cedar. Mira moved through the kitchen with her usual care, but something inside her felt lighter. She had barely slept, replaying every word Adrian had said the night before. When she delivered his breakfast tray, the study door was already open. Adrian was by the window, his cane leaning against the chair. He looked different in the morning light, less like the distant billionaire she had imagined, more like a man trying to remember how to breathe again. "Good morning," she said softly. He turned with a small smile. "Good morning, Mira. I see you survived another storm." "I did, thanks to the towels," she replied, setting down the tray. Adrian gestured toward a chair. "Sit for a moment. You look like you have not eaten." "And I," Aphrodite. Her eyes widened. "I cannot, sir. It is not allowed." "I will not tell if you will not," he said, a hint of warmth in his tone. Hesitant at first, Mira sat at the edge of the chair. He poured her tea, the gesture almost strange coming from someone of his status. For a moment, they were just two people sharing silence, watching sunlight dance on the waves outside. He spoke first. I looked at your sketches again last night. The one of the cliffs, it feels alive. Her heart lifted. That view always gives me hope. It makes everything else seem small. That is exactly why I bought this house, he said quietly. To feel small again. She tilted her head, surprised. Most people spend their lives trying to feel bigger. He smiled faintly. And most of them forget what really matters while doing it. A gentle stillness settled between them. Then Mira noticed the framed photograph on his desk, a woman with kind eyes, standing beside him in front of a half-finished building. She looked at Adrian carefully. Was that your wife? He nodded once. Emily. She passed away 2 years ago. The accident you may have heard about it was hers too. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Mira's voice softened. I am sorry. She was everything I thought I needed, he said, his gaze distant. And when she was gone, I realized how empty success really was. Mira wanted to say something comforting, but all she managed was, sometimes we find meaning in unexpected places. He looked at her, then really looked at her, and the smallest trace of peace flickered in his eyes. Maybe that is true. Later that day, as she cleaned the gallery room, Mira noticed one wall bare except for faint outlines where frames used to hang. She hesitated, then took a deep breath and pinned one of her sketches there, a small drawing of the sea under morning light. She left it unsigned. That evening, Adrian walked through the gallery, cane tapping softly on the floor. When his eyes fell on the drawing, he stopped. The pencil strokes were simple but alive, full of quiet courage. For the first time in months, he felt something stir, a sense that healing did not always come with time, but with connection. The next morning, the sketch was still there. Underneath it, in neat handwriting, someone had written on a note, "Thank you for seeing me, even when I could not see myself." Adrian smiled as he read it. He knew exactly who it was from. Outside, the tide rolled in gently, as if the sea itself was carrying their unspoken words back and forth between them. If you believe that kindness can awaken the parts of us we thought were gone forever, share this story. Now, let us return to Mira and Adrian, as their quiet connection begins to turn into something neither of them expected. A week passed quietly. The mansion, once echoing with emptiness, now carried the soft rhythm of routine footsteps, laughter from the kitchen, and the faint hum of life returning. Mira's days were still filled with cleaning and laundry, but something in the air had changed. Every morning, Adrian greeted her with a calm smile, and every evening, she left a new sketch tucked somewhere he would find it, a quiet conversation without words. One afternoon, Adrian asked her to bring tea to the library. When she entered, the long table was covered with papers, old architectural plans, and one framed sketch, hers. The little drawing of the sea now hung on the wall behind his desk. You kept it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I did, he answered. It reminds me that simplicity can hold more truth than perfection. Mira smiled, embarrassed but touched. It is not perfect. I drew it quickly. Sometimes quick things are the most honest, he said. Then he gestured toward the table. I need your opinion on something. My opinion? She laughed softly. Sir, I clean floors. And yet you see the world differently, Adrian replied. That is what I need. He unfolded a large sheet blueprints for a community art center overlooking the cliffs. It was my wife's dream, he said. I stopped working on it after the accident. But lately I keep thinking, maybe I should finish it. Mira traced a trembling finger over the sketch of the building. It is beautiful. She must have loved the idea. And my compad, she believed art could heal people, he said. Maybe she was right. Their eyes met hers, filled with admiration, his with quiet gratitude. Something in that moment bound them together, not by romance yet, but by shared belief in something human, something kind. That evening, Mira found herself on the terrace after dinner, watching the horizon melt into orange and violet. Adrian joined her, walking slower than usual but without his cane. The wind tangled her hair, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. Do you ever think about leaving? He asked. Sometimes, she admitted. When things get hard, I imagine the kind of life I used to dream of. But lately, it feels like I already found part of it here. He looked at her, surprised by the honesty in her voice. You have given this house more warmth than it has had in years. She blushed, turning away. I just do my job. It's Stan. Indubitably problem. No, Mira, he said quietly. You remind me what it means to live." The words hung between them, carried away by the sea breeze. Later that night, Mira sat by her small window, unable to sleep. Her heart beat too fast, her thoughts tangled between fear and something she dared not name. She told herself it was impossible he was a billionaire, she was a maid. But the way he looked at her tonight, it did not feel impossible at all. Across the hall, Adrian stood alone in his study, gazing at the same ocean. For the first time in 2 years, he felt the faint, unfamiliar pull of hope. He whispered into the quiet, "Maybe second chances do not come in grand moments. Maybe they come as a clumsy girl with a mop." And somewhere in the house, Mira smiled without knowing why, as if she had heard him. If you believe that even broken people can find light again, share this story with someone who needs it. Now, let us return to Mira and Adrian, as the world outside begins to notice the spark that has quietly grown between them. By the time spring rolled in, the mansion no longer felt like a quiet museum. It felt alive. Adrian's injury had almost fully healed, and he spent his mornings walking the cliffs again, often with Mira following a few steps behind, carrying his coffee. Their conversations had grown longer, their silences more comfortable. One afternoon, he asked her to accompany him into town. "There is something I want to show you," he said. They drove along the coast, the sun turning the road into gold. When the car stopped, Mira's eyes widened. Before them stood the half-finished structure from his blueprints, the community art center his late wife had dreamed of. The skeleton of the building framed the ocean perfectly. "I used to come here with Emily," Adrian said, voice low. "We wanted to create a place where people could paint, learn, or simply breathe." "It is beautiful," Mira whispered. He looked at her, his expression soft. "I want to finish it, but I cannot do it alone." "You have architects, builders, everything," she said. "I do," he replied. "But I need someone who remembers what beauty feels like. Someone honest." She met his gaze, understanding the unspoken trust behind his words. "If you want my help, then yes," she said. "I will do everything I can." They spent hours walking through the site, Mira suggesting details: large windows for light, benches near the sea. Adrian listened closely, occasionally sketching her ideas. By the end of the day, both were laughing easily, dust and salt in their hair. For the first time, Mira forgot who he was supposed to be. As the sun dipped low, they sat on a beam overlooking the waves. A gentle wind blew, carrying the scent of jasmine. "Do you ever think about starting over?" she asked. "All the time," he admitted. "But I never thought I would actually want to." Their eyes met, and the air between them stilled. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his hand lingering just a second too long. Her breath caught, and then he pulled back with a quiet laugh. "Sorry," he murmured. "Force of habit. I fix things, even hair." She smiled nervously, her heart fluttering in a way she could not explain. "You did fine. Well, some." That night, back at the mansion, Mira could still feel the warmth of his hand against her skin. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, but deep down, she knew something had shifted. Across the hall, Adrian stood by the fireplace, staring at the flames. He had spent years building walls made of success, control, silence, but Mira had walked right through them without trying. He poured himself a drink, the reflection of the fire glinting in the glass. "What are you doing to me, Mira?" he whispered, half to himself. Down in her small room, Mira opened her sketchbook. On a blank page, she drew the art center, fully built, surrounded by people smiling under the sunlight. And standing near the doorway, she drew him Adrian, watching her with that same quiet warmth. She closed the book gently and smiled. "Maybe," she said to the empty room, "this is what starting over feels like." In phrase, if you believe that new beginnings often come disguised as second chances, share this story with someone who needs hope. Now, let us return to Mira and Adrian, as their quiet friendship edges closer to something neither of them planned to find. The following week, the Art Center project began to move forward. Workers filled the site with energy and sound, and for the first time in years, Adrian seemed alive with purpose. Mira was there every day, carrying sketchboards, serving coffee, and quietly helping where she could. To the others, she was just part of the staff, but Adrian always looked for her first. One afternoon, while reviewing blueprints under the open tent, Adrian turned to her with a rare, unguarded smile. "You have become my unofficial partner in crime, Mira." She laughed lightly. "I thought I was only the maid." "It's not full out or friend sight. You stopped being that a long time ago, he said softly. The words hung between them, warm and dangerous. Mira quickly looked away, pretending to study the drawings. Her heart was thudding so loud she was sure he could hear it. That evening, as she packed up the sketches, a black luxury car pulled into the construction lot. A woman stepped out tall, elegant, and polished, with eyes sharp as glass. Adrian's entire demeanor changed. Clara, he said, I did not expect you here. You never do, the woman replied with a cool smile. I came to see what you are spending millions on this time. Her gaze shifted to Mira, assessing her like a curiosity. And who is this? Mira froze, clutching the sketch roll to her chest. I just help with, She is part of the project, Adrian interrupted. His voice was calm but protective. Clara's smile tightened. How thoughtful. You always had a soft spot for lost causes. The words stung, but Mira said nothing. Adrian's jaw clenched, his voice low. You should go, Clara. Do not worry, she said, turning toward the car. I just wanted to see the reason you stopped returning my calls. The car door slammed, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than the ocean mist. Mira finally spoke. I should get back to the house. Mira. Adrian reached for her arm, but she stepped back. It is fine, she said quickly, though her voice trembled. You do not have to explain anything. Later that night, she stood alone on the balcony of her small room, watching the mansion lights flicker below. Her heart hurt in a way she did not understand. She told herself it was foolish he belonged to a world that had nothing to do with hers. Yet every time she closed her eyes, she saw the look on his face when he said, You stopped being that a long time ago. Inside his study, Adrian paced restlessly. Clara's visit had reminded him of everything he used to be ruthless, closed off, addicted to power. But when he thought of Mira, the noise faded. She was the first person in years who looked at him without expectation or judgment. He picked up the phone to call her, then stopped, setting it down again. Some feelings, he realized, could not be rushed. Down the hall, Mira opened her sketchbook and began a new drawing. This time it was not the sea or the mansion or even the art center. It was two figures standing apart on a bridge, their hands reaching across the distance but not yet touching. She looked at it for a long moment before whispering, Maybe some things are not meant to meet in the middle. Rulijsen Forditions for Fivertan. If you have ever cared for someone you knew you could not have, leave a heart in the comments. Now, let us return to Mira and Adrian, as the world around them begins to test what their quiet bond is truly made of. The next morning came heavy with fog. The mansion felt colder than usual, its wide halls echoing with silence. Mira tried to go about her chores as if nothing had changed, but the tension from the previous day clung to her like the mist outside. Every sound, the clink of dishes, the sweep of her broom seemed too loud in the quiet. In the afternoon, the housekeeper handed her an envelope. Mr. Holt asked that this be delivered to the post office, the woman said. He left early for a meeting in the city. Mira nodded, but curiosity tugged at her. On the front, written in Adrian's sharp handwriting, were the words Carter Foundation, Community Arts Project. Inside, she could feel the outline of a folded check. He was officially funding the center. Despite everything that had happened, he had kept his promise. She smiled faintly, though her chest still ached. Maybe that was who he was, a man who fixed things, even when people broke. That evening, while tidying the library, she noticed something new on his desk, a file labeled Brooks and Taylor Holdings. She froze. That was Clara's company, the same woman who had called her a lost cause. Before she could stop herself, she flipped it open. Inside were documents showing the art center's land ownership transferred under Brooks and Taylor 6 months ago. The realization struck her like ice. Clara owned the land, which meant Clara could take it back. The entire dream could vanish overnight. The door creaked open behind her. Adrian stood there, his face unreadable. What are you doing, Mira? She turned quickly, the file still in her hands. I am sorry, sir. You should not be going through my desk, he said, his tone sharper than she had ever heard it. I know. I just saw her name, and I was worried. This is not your concern, he cut in. Please, leave it. The words stung more than she expected. I only wanted to help. He sighed, rubbing his temples. You already have, but some things are better handled by people who understand them. That last sentence broke her completely. She nodded, blinking back tears. Of course, Mr. Holt. I understand. When she left the room, he closed his eyes, regretting the harshness in his voice. He had not meant to hurt her. But the truth was, he was scared of losing control, of needing someone again. Downstairs, Mira packed her things in silence. The sketchbook, her pencils, a few folded uniforms. By nightfall, she was gone. The next morning, the mansion felt empty once more. Adrian noticed immediately. The halls were too quiet. Her laugh, her footsteps, her soft humming, they were all gone. He searched the house and found only one thing left behind: her sketchbook. On the last page, she had drawn the art center, completed and full of light. Below it, a single line read, "For those who believe even broken dreams can be rebuilt." Adrian sat down, the weight of her absence sinking into him like the tide pulling away from shore. He whispered to the empty room, "You were never just the maid, Mira." Outside, the fog began to lift. The ocean shimmered in the distance, waiting for something or someone to return. If you have ever walked away from something because it hurt too much to stay, share this story with someone who will understand. Now let us return to Mira and Adrian, as one of them finally realizes that love, once awakened, refuses to be buried by silence. 3 weeks passed. The mansion by the sea returned to its old rhythm, quiet, polished, and painfully empty. Adrian threw himself into work, signing contracts and holding meetings that meant nothing. At night, he would catch himself glancing toward the doorway, expecting to see Mira's small frame appear with a cup of tea or a hesitant smile. But she never did. The art center construction continued, yet the joy had drained out of it. Every blueprint, every decision reminded him of her, the girl who had walked into his world by accident and left it brighter than it had ever been. One evening, as the sun dipped into the ocean, his assistant handed him an invitation. "The Carter Foundation Gala," the man said. "They want you to be guest of honor for funding the new center." Adrian hesitated. "When is it?" "Tomorrow night." He nodded slowly. "I will go." The gala was held in the city glass chandeliers, expensive suits, 100 faces pretending to care about charity. But when Adrian stepped onto the stage and the spotlight hit him, he saw something that made his heart stop. At the back of the room, carrying a tray of drinks, stood Mira. She was dressed in the black uniform of an event server, her hair tied neatly back, her expression calm but distant. For a moment, the world fell away. He began his speech, but the words blurred. "Art," he said quietly, "is not built from wealth. It is built from the courage of ordinary people who still believe in beauty." His eyes never left her. "This project belongs to them. You know." When the applause ended, he stepped down from the stage, weaving through the crowd until he reached her. "Mira," he said softly. She froze, her eyes wide. "Mr. Holt?" "No," he interrupted gently. "It is Adrian. Please." The tray in her hands trembled. "You should not be here talking to me. People are watching." "Let them," he said. "I spent years hiding behind titles. I will not do it anymore." She looked up at him, her voice shaking. "Why are you here?" "Because I was wrong," he said. "You were never just the maid. You were the reason I remembered what it means to live." "The art center opens next week, Mira. It has your name on the entrance wall, inspired by Mira, who believed broken things can be rebuilt." Her lips parted, tears glimmering in her eyes. "You did not have to do that." "I wanted to," he said simply. "Because it was never about the building. It was about you." "I'm said matter." The music swelled around them, but neither of them moved. Adrian took her hand, his voice low. "Come home, Mira." She hesitated, then nodded once, unable to stop the tears. "Only if you promise not to slip this time." He smiled, the kind of smile she had never seen before. Real, unguarded. "No promises," he whispered, "but I will hold on tighter." The next morning, the ocean breeze filled the new art center. Sunlight spilled through the windows, catching the plaque by the door. The Mira Holt Gallery, a place to begin again. Inside, paintings hung on the walls, her sketches turned to canvases, her dreams finally alive. Mira stood beside Adrian, her fingers laced with his, both of them looking out at the sea. She said softly, "It is strange, isn't it? Everything started with one mistake." Adrian looked at her, his voice full of quiet wonder. "The best mistake I ever made." In Juan Frow's of Quais, the camera of the story pulled back to the cliffs, the waves and the glass windows glowing with morning light. Two people, no longer broken, standing together exactly where they were meant to be. If you believe that love often begins where the world expects it to end, share this story with someone who still believes in second chances. And that is how the clumsy maid who slipped in a billionaire's bathroom became the woman who helped him rediscover life itself.